Imagine standing at your mother's funeral, 8 months pregnant, and your husband hands you divorce papers in front of everyone. That was the moment Emily thought her life was over, but little did he know, she was about to inherit $500 million. Emily Parker, 27, stood in the pouring rain, her hand instinctively resting over her growing belly. The cemetery was quiet except for the murmurs of distant relatives. She had come to say goodbye to the only family she had left, her mother, who had always kept secrets no one knew about. And then it happened. Michael, the man she once loved, the father of her unborn child, stepped forward. In front of family, friends, and neighbors, he handed her the divorce papers with a cold smile. Shock, humiliation, and disbelief flooded through her. People whispered, some looked away in awkward pity, but Emily said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She only felt the first stirrings of a fire inside her, one that would soon change everything. Hello, dear listeners. Thank you for joining me today. Before I begin my story, I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel and left a comment writing which state or country you are listening from. It always warms my heart to see how far our stories travel. So now, let me tell you this story. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. My name is Emily Parker. I live in Chicago. And today, I'm telling you about the day my life broke apart and quietly began again. I was 27 years old, 8 months pregnant, standing at my mother's funeral. It was raining that day, not a soft rain, but the kind that soaks through your clothes and into your bones. Black umbrellas filled the cemetery, and the air smelled like wet earth and fresh lilies. My mother's coffin rested in front of me, covered in white flowers. She was the last person who had ever truly protected me. And now she was gone. I stood there with one hand on my swollen belly, feeling my baby move, reminding me that even in death, life insists on continuing. I remember thinking that this was the lowest moment of my life. I was wrong. That's when I saw him. Michael Thompson. My husband. The man I married believing he would stand beside me no matter what. The father of the child growing inside me. He walked toward me through the rain, his suit dark and heavy, his face unreadable. There was no grief in his eyes.
No hesitation.
Just distance. In his hand, he held a white envelope, perfectly dry, as if even the storm respected whatever cruelty was sealed inside it. When he stopped in front of me, people went quiet. I could feel their eyes on us. I could feel their curiosity, their discomfort, their pity. Emily, he said calmly, like we were discussing a business deal. This isn't working anymore. Sign these and we'll both move on. For a moment, I didn't understand what he was holding. Then I did. Divorce papers. At my mother's burial. While I was 8 months pregnant. The world didn't spin. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart the way people expect women to. My chest burned. My throat tightened, but my body stayed still. Somewhere behind me, someone gasped. Someone else whispered my name. But all I could hear was the sound of rain hitting the coffin of the woman who gave me life. I looked down at the papers. My hands were shaking, but my voice never came. I thought of every promise Michael had ever made. Every night, I stayed awake worrying about our future while he slept peacefully beside me. Every time he told me I was too emotional, too ambitious, too much. I thought of my child.
And I signed.
Not because I was weak. Not because I agreed. But because something inside me went completely quiet, the kind of silence that only comes before a storm. Michael took the papers back without a word. There was relief on his face. Satisfaction. He truly believed he had won. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there alone, divorced, pregnant, and freshly motherless. I knelt beside my mother's coffin as the rain streamed down my face. I pressed my forehead against the cold wood and whispered, "Mom, I don't know how to do this without you." My tears fell onto the flowers. But beneath the grief, something else was growing. Not anger, not hatred, but resolve. My mother had taught me many things, most of them in silence. Strength was one of them. As the service ended and people slowly began to leave, My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't check it right away. Money, messages, the world. None of it mattered in that moment. When I finally looked, there was a single message from a lawyer I barely recognized. Emily Parker, you have been named the sole heir to your mother's estate. Further details will follow. I didn't know the number yet. I didn't know the power behind those words. All I knew was that my mother had left me more than memories. I stood up, wiped my face, and took one last look at the place where she rested. Michael was already gone. He didn't look back. He didn't see me standing there, hand on my belly, breathing through the pain. That was fine. Everyone there thought I was broken, finished, defeated. But they were wrong. They had just witnessed the beginning of a woman who would never beg again, never be humiliated again, and never allow anyone to decide her worth. This is my story.
And
This is only the beginning. The rain followed me all the way home. I don't remember driving. I don't remember stopping at traffic lights or turning corners. My hands moved on their own, my body functioning while my mind stayed behind. Back at the cemetery, back at my mother's coffin, back at the moment my husband erased our marriage with a pen. When I finally reached the apartment, the silence hit me harder than the rain ever could. Michael's things were already gone. Closet half empty. Bathroom shelf cleared. No note.
no explanation.
Just absence. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, my knees shaking. For the first time that day, I allowed myself to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears sliding down my face as my baby kicked inside me, as if asking why my heart was breaking so fast. I'm sorry, I whispered, pressing my palm against my belly. I promise, I won't let this world hurt you the way it hurt me. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's face, calm, detached, relieved. As if divorcing his pregnant wife at her mother's burial was nothing more than checking off a task on his calendar. By morning, my eyes were swollen, my head pounding, but my mind was clear in a way it hadn't been for months. I picked up my phone. The lawyer's message was still there. I hesitated before calling. Part of me wasn't ready to hear anything about money or estates or legal matters. My mother was gone. That was the only truth my heart could hold. Still, something inside me told me to listen. The office was downtown, tall glass building, quiet lobby, everything polished and cold. I felt out of place walking in, pregnant, dressed simply, still carrying the weight of grief on my shoulders. The receptionist looked up, surprised for a brief second, then smiled politely. Emily Parker? I nodded. Mr. Reynolds will see you now. The lawyer was older, calm, with kind eyes that reminded me of my mother. That alone nearly broke me again. I'm very sorry for your loss, he said gently. Your mother spoke about you often. That sentence felt like a hand reaching into my chest. She did. I asked quietly. He smiled. More than you know.
He slid a folder across the desk. Thick.
Heavy. Emily, your mother, Margaret Parker, was a very private woman. I almost laughed. That's one way to put it. She owned multiple companies, investment portfolios, properties in 3 states, and offshore accounts. She kept everything under holding trusts. My heart began to pound. I don't understand, I said. My mother was a consultant. She lived simply. Yes, he replied.
By choice.
He looked at me carefully before saying the next words. You are the sole heir to an estate valued at approximately $500 million. The room went quiet. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh.
To tell me this was a mistake.
But he didn't. $500 million. My mother, the woman who reused grocery bags and clipped coupons, was worth $500 million. She built everything herself, he continued. She wanted you to live a normal life. She didn't want money to define you or attract the wrong people. Michael's face flashed through my mind like lightning. The wrong people. I felt sick. She left you more than money, the lawyer said. She left you control. Full authority.
No trustees.
No conditions. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. There were documents, signatures, dates going back decades. My mother hadn't just been successful, she had been brilliant, strategic, powerful, and she had hidden it all for me. Tears blurred my vision. She knew, I whispered. She knew he would leave. The lawyer didn't deny it. She asked me to give you this only after certain events. He handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in my mother's handwriting. I opened it slowly. My Emily, if you are reading this, it means I am gone and someone has failed you when you needed them most.
Do
not beg. Do not explain. Do not shrink. Everything I built was always meant to protect you. Now it's your turn to rise. I couldn't breathe. That letter did something to me. It didn't make me angry. It made me calm. Dangerously calm. Over the next few weeks, my life changed quietly.
No announcements. No social media.
No revenge posts. I moved into a secure residence under my mother's company name. I met advisors, accountants, security consultants. Men in suits who spoke carefully now, who listened when I spoke. No one questioned my intelligence. No one talked over me. For the first time in my life, I was seen. Michael tried calling. Once. Then twice. Then many times. I never answered. He sent messages. We need to talk. This doesn't have to be ugly. I didn't know you were struggling that badly. Struggling. I deleted every message. The baby came early. A little girl. I named her Grace. Because she arrived softly, quietly, and changed everything. As I held her for the first time, I understood something with absolute clarity. Michael hadn't just divorced me. He had divorced his future. And one day, soon, he would understand exactly what he lost. But not today. Today, I rocked my daughter to sleep and whispered the truth she would grow up knowing. You come from a woman who survived betrayal and turned it into power. This was no longer a story about divorce. This was the beginning of an empire. And Michael Thompson? He was still walking around, smiling, convinced he had escaped a burden. He had no idea. Not yet. I didn't tell anyone. Not the neighbors. Not distant relatives. Not even the few friends who had quietly disappeared after my divorce. For weeks after the funeral, my life moved in silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, intentional, almost dangerous. People assumed I was broken. A divorced, pregnant woman living quietly, avoiding the world. They were wrong. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise. I learned. I listened. I signed documents I barely understood at first, then mastered. I sat across polished tables from people who once would have dismissed me without a second glance, CEOs, investors, board members, and watched their tone change when they realized I wasn't just someone's daughter. I was the decision maker. My mother had prepared everything. She hadn't left chaos behind. She had left structure, strategy, protection. Shell companies.
Trusts.
Legal walls so strong even seasoned attorneys spoke carefully around them. And still no one outside those rooms knew my name. That was intentional. Michael didn't know either. He was busy enjoying his freedom. I saw it without looking for it. A mutual friend's social media post. Michael smiling at a rooftop bar, drink in hand, arm casually draped around a woman I didn't recognize. She was young, confident, laughing at something he said. The caption read, "New beginnings." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Not because it hurt, not anymore. But because I understood something with absolute clarity. He thought he had escaped. He thought he had cut ties with a burden. And for the first time since the funeral, I smiled. My daughter, Grace, was born on a quiet Tuesday morning.
No chaos.
No drama. Just a steady cry that filled the room and rewired my soul in seconds. As the nurse placed her on my chest, something inside me settled. Everything I was building, every decision I was making suddenly had a face. Her face. I named her Grace because she arrived without bitterness, without fear. Because she reminded me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it breathes softly against your skin and changes you forever. The first night I brought her home, I stood by the window, city lights glowing below, and made a promise. No one will ever make you feel unwanted, I whispered. No one will ever decide your worth. That promise became my compass. 3 weeks later, Michael found out. Not from me. Not from gossip. From a headline. I remember the exact moment because my assistant froze mid-sentence. "Emily, you might want to see this." She turned the tablet toward me. The headline read, "Private Investment Group Acquires Majority Stake in Thompson Logistics." Michael's company. My mother's holding firm. My name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. But I knew what this meant. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady, mind clear. "It's done," I said quietly. Within hours, Michael's phone started ringing. Board members. Partners.
Banks.
By evening, his office was chaos. By night, his confidence cracked. He showed up at my building the next morning. No warning.
No appointment.
Security called me immediately. "There's a man downstairs asking for you. Michael Thompson." I paused. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, calmly, "Send him away." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. He was begging now.
Texts flooded in.
"Emily, please. We need to talk." I didn't know. "Why didn't you tell me?" I stared at the screen, unmoved. Tell him what? That the woman he humiliated at a funeral was now the silent owner of his future. That the signatures he once dismissed now belonged to me?
No.
He didn't deserve explanations. He deserved understanding. And understanding would come slowly. Over the next few days, things unraveled for him in ways he couldn't control. Contracts paused. Deals delayed. Partners backed away quietly. No public scandal.
No dramatic collapse, just uncertainty.
The kind that keeps you awake at night. I watched from a distance, feeding grace, reviewing reports, attending meetings where men twice my age asked what I wanted to do next. Every time someone called me Ms. Parker with respect in their voice, I thought of the day Michael handed me divorce papers like I was disposable. The contrast didn't make me angry. It made me focused. Michael finally got through one night. A private number. I answered. "Emily," his voice cracked, stripped of arrogance. "I had no idea who your mother was. Why didn't you tell me?" I closed my eyes. "You never asked," I replied. Silence. Then, softly, "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did." "I'm not calling to fight," he continued quickly. "I just want to see you. To understand." Understand what? That power changes how people treat you? That respect follows money faster than love ever did? "You already understood me," I said calmly. "At the cemetery." He inhaled sharply. "That wasn't fair," he whispered. "No," I agreed. "It wasn't." He waited.
Hoping.
Expecting mercy. He didn't get it. "I wish you well, Michael," I said. "But my life doesn't include you anymore." I ended the call. That night, I held Grace a little longer. Not because I was sad, but because I was free. The media began circling soon after. Not tabloids, business publications. Quiet profiles. Anonymous sources. A new female power player. The mysterious heiress behind recent acquisitions. They didn't have my photo yet. They didn't have my story. But they would.
Soon.
Michael watched it all unfold from the outside. Every article, every whisper, every delayed deal carved the truth deeper into him. He hadn't divorced a woman who had nothing. He had walked away from the future he could never buy back. And I was just getting started. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And the world was finally beginning to see me. I didn't announce my rise. I didn't post pictures. I didn't seek sympathy. I disappeared. After the funeral, after the divorce papers, after the rain washed the last bit of my old life away, I made a decision that changed everything.
Il chose silence.
People think silence means weakness. They're wrong. Silence is where power learns to breathe. I moved into a quiet apartment overlooking the city. Nothing flashy, nothing that would attract attention. Just glass windows, clean lines, and space to think. Every night, I sat by the window with my hands on my belly, feeling my daughter move, reminding myself why I had to survive and why I had to win. Michael never checked on me again. Not once. No call. No message. No concern for the woman carrying his child. But the lawyer did. The call came 3 days after the funeral. "Emily Parker," he said calmly, "your mother prepared for this moment for years." That's when I learned the truth. My mother wasn't just a quiet woman who lived modestly and avoided attention. She was an investor, a silent partner, a strategist behind corporations Michael admired from a distance. She had built an empire quietly because power doesn't need noise. And she left everything to me. $500 million. Shares. Private accounts. Legal protections. Influence. But more than that, she left instructions. She knew Michael's type. Men who only respect money. Men who mistake kindness for weakness. Men who leave when life gets inconvenient. I cried that night. Not because of Michael. Because for the first time, I understood my mother completely. She didn't raise me to beg. She raised me to observe. When my daughter was born, something inside me shifted forever. Holding her in my arms, I realized revenge wasn't about hurting Michael. It was about never letting him matter again. I named her Grace. Because grace is power wrapped in calm. I spent months learning quietly. I met advisors my mother trusted. I studied contracts. I listened more. Then I spoke. I dressed simply. I moved carefully. Meanwhile, Michael was thriving, or so he thought. He posted photos. New suits. New woman on his arm. Celebratory dinners. He believed he had escaped responsibility. He believed he had won. What he didn't know was that every company he dreamed of working with, every deal he chased, every door he wanted opened, I was already inside. I watched his career closely. Not emotionally, strategically. I saw the cracks forming before he did. The late payments. The risky partnerships. The arrogance. Michael had always relied on charm. But charm fails when numbers start talking. And numbers always talk. The first time he felt me, he didn't recognize me. His firm lost a major investor overnight.
No explanation.
No warning. Then another. Then another. Meetings were postponed. Calls went unanswered. He thought it was bad luck. I knew better. Because I wasn't attacking him. I was removing protection. One evening, months later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I already knew it was him. I let it ring. Then I answered calmly. "Hello." Silence. Then his voice, uncertain, unfamiliar. "Emily, it's Michael." I smiled. Not because I missed him. Because for the first time, he sounded small. He talked too fast. Apologized without meaning it. Asked about the baby, like it was an afterthought. I listened. Then I said one sentence. "I hope you're doing well." And I hung up. Power isn't loud. Power knows when to walk away. The next phase came naturally. A public charity launch, funded by a private foundation. My foundation. My name wasn't front and center. Just one of many board members. Michael attended the event. He didn't know. He stood 10 feet away from me and didn't recognize the woman I had become. Not the posture. Not the calm. Not the presence. When the main investor was announced, the room shifted. My name echoed softly through the hall. Emily Parker. Michael froze. I watched the realization hit him slowly, painfully.
That
moment wasn't revenge. It was truth. Truth always arrives quietly, then changes everything. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. Because power doesn't explain itself. It simply exists. And as I held Grace that night, watching the city glow beneath us, I whispered something my mother once told me. Let them underestimate you. It makes victory effortless. And Michael? His downfall had only just begun. I used to believe closure came with apologies. I was wrong. Closure comes when you finally see someone exactly as they are, small, afraid, and powerless in the world they once ruled. By the time Michael realized something was wrong, it was already too late. His calls became frequent. His voice became softer. The confidence he once wore like armor had cracks running through it. At first, I ignored him. Not because I hated him. Because I had outgrown him. Motherhood changes you in ways no betrayal ever could. Every time I held Grace, I felt grounded in a truth Michael would never understand. Real power doesn't dominate, it protects. And I was done protecting him. The invitation arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. A sealed envelope. Cream paper. Gold lettering. A private shareholder meeting. One Michael had been desperate to attend for years. The kind of room where decisions were made quietly and lives changed permanently. My name was printed on the host line. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply scheduled a babysitter and chose a black dress. Not mourning black, but authority black. When I arrived, the room shifted. Not loudly.
Subtly.
That's how real power enters. Michael was already there. Pacing. Checking his phone. Trying to look confident. When he saw me, time froze. His eyes widened, his breath caught, and for the first time since the cemetery, he looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Because he didn't. I wasn't the quiet woman who waited for him to come home. I wasn't the pregnant wife he humiliated. I was calm, grounded, unreachable. "Emily," he said, uncertain. "What are you doing here?" I met his eyes and answered honestly. "Working." The meeting began. Chats, numbers, decisions. Michael spoke too much, a mistake he'd always made. Confidence without substance is just noise. And the room noticed. Then it was my turn. I stood. Not dramatically. Just enough. "I'll be brief," I said. Silence followed. "I represent a controlling interest in 3 holding companies connected to this firm." Michael's face drained of color. "I've reviewed the risk exposure," I continued calmly. "And, effective immediately, we'll be withdrawing our support."
Gasps.
Whispers.
Shock.
Michael stood abruptly. "You can't." I looked at him then. Really looked. And spoke softly. "You taught me something important," I said. "You taught me how quickly people abandon what they think has no value." The room was still. Michael's voice cracked. "Emily, please. Let's talk." I tilted my head slightly. "We already did," I replied. "At my mother's funeral." Security escorted him out. Not because I asked. Because power doesn't need to ask. Later that night, my phone rang again. Michael. Crying this time. "I didn't know," he whispered. "About the money. About who you were." I closed my eyes. And for the first time, I felt nothing. "You knew who I was," I said quietly. "You just didn't think I mattered." Silence. Then desperation. "I made a mistake. I was scared. I didn't think you'd survive without me." I smiled gently, not cruelly. "That was your biggest mistake," I said. I hung up. Justice doesn't scream. It resolves. The final blow wasn't public. It was personal. I filed for full custody. Not out of revenge. Out of protection. Michael fought, weakly. But the record spoke. The absence. The neglect. The choices. The judge barely hesitated. Grace stayed with me. Where she belonged. When Michael saw her last, months later, she didn't recognize him. And that broke him more than losing money ever could. I didn't celebrate that either. I just held my daughter tighter. Because winning isn't about watching someone fall. It's about standing somewhere so high. Their fall no longer matters. Sometimes, late at night, I sit by the same window I once cried beside. The city still glows. Grace sleeps peacefully. And I think of my mother. She knew this world. She knew men like Michael, and she trusted me enough to finish what she began. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Never underestimate a woman who has lost everything. Because when she rebuilds, she builds herself. And no one can ever take that away again. There was a time when I thought survival was enough. If I could just get through the day, if I could just stop crying at night, if I could just protect my child, I believed that would be victory. But survival is only the beginning. After the boardroom, after Michael was escorted out, after the world finally showed him what I had learned long ago, I went home and sat in the dark for a long time. Grace slept peacefully in her crib. The city hummed outside my window, unaware of the quiet war that had ended. And for the first time since my mother died, I allowed myself to feel everything. Not anger, not triumph,
Grief.
Because no matter how strong you become, there are losses power can't replace. I miss my mother. I miss the version of myself who once believed love meant endurance. I miss the woman I was before I learned how cruel people can be when they think you're disposable. But I didn't want her back. She had done her job. She brought me here. In the weeks that followed, the world reacted. Quietly at first, then loudly. Michael's name faded from conversations. His invitations stopped coming. Doors that once opened for him stayed closed. Not because I demanded it, because the truth finally caught up. People like Michael survive on perception. Once that cracks, there's nothing left to stand on. He tried to reach me again. Letters this time. Long ones. Apologies soaked in regret and self-pity. He wrote about fear, about pressure, about mistakes. He wrote about grace. I read every word, not to reopen wounds, but to confirm something I already knew. He was sorry for losing comfort, not for losing me.
So I didn't respond.
Some people don't deserve closure. They deserve distance. Raising Grace alone wasn't easy. Money helps, yes. But money doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. It doesn't soothe fevers. It doesn't teach you patience. Motherhood stripped me down to my core. It taught me humility. It taught me boundaries. It taught me that love without respect is not love. It's erosion. Every milestone Grace reached felt like a quiet rebellion against the past. Her first smile. Her first steps. Her laughter filling rooms, once heavy with silence. She didn't know her father. And she didn't need to. She had safety. She had presence. She had a future built on intention. That was my real inheritance. One afternoon, months later, I visited my mother's grave again. No rain this time. Just sunlight filtering through trees. I brought Grace with me. I sat on the grass and spoke out loud. Not because I believed my mother could hear me, but because I needed to say the words. "You were right," I whispered. About everything. I told her about the boardroom, about the companies, about Grace. And then I said the hardest truth of all. I'm not angry anymore. That surprised me, because anger had carried me for so long. But anger is heavy, and I was done carrying unnecessary weight. Michael crossed my mind less and less, not because I forgave him, but because relevance fades when lessons are learned. Years later, I would see his name once more. A small article, a failed venture, a quiet bankruptcy.
No scandal.
No drama, just an ending. I closed the article and went back to my life. Because my story was never meant to revolve around his downfall. It was meant to center my becoming. I built things after that. Not empires, ecosystems. Programs for women who were starting over. Legal funds for mothers fighting silent battles. Investments in voices that had been ignored. I stayed behind the scenes. I didn't need applause. Legacy isn't loud. Grace grew up watching me work, not obsessively, but intentionally. She learned early that strength doesn't shout, that dignity is non-negotiable, that love should never require humiliation. One evening, when she was old enough to ask questions, she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Mom, why are you so calm all the time?" I smiled. Because calm is earned. It took practice, I told her. And pain. She nodded like she understood more than her years suggested. Maybe she did. The final truth is this. I didn't win because I inherited money. I won because I didn't let betrayal define me. I didn't let abandonment harden me. I didn't let cruelty turn me cruel. I became something quieter, stronger, untouchable. If someone ever tells you that losing everything means the end, they're lying. Sometimes, it's the beginning of finally becoming who you were meant to be. I was divorced at my mother's burial. Pregnant. Humiliated. Left behind. And yet, I stand here today, whole. Not because the world was kind, but because I learned how to rise without asking permission. And that is a power no one can ever take away again.